Good morning. Oh, excuse me. Good afternoon, Rexmill family. It is so good to have you here. Thank you so much. I hope everybody had a safe break. Happy New Year. And that's from myself, Dr. Turner, and the whole Rexmill family. Today we have a special treat. We have somebody that came in. They're actually going to go over some things with us. We're going to basically have like a candid conversation, but it's basically dealing with living and breathing in the virtual world. So first, let's start off with our vision and mission statement, and then we will go from there, and I'll introduce her shortly to you. So the vision and mission of Rexmill Middle School. The vision of Rexmill Middle STEM School is to be a school of high performance, preparing all students to live and compete successfully in a science and technology-driven society where there is an appreciation for the arts. The mission of Rexmill Middle STEM School is to motivate our community to live inspired and purpose-filled lives through intentional exposure to the arts, science, technology, and mathematical practices. So now I'm going to bring on Latasha Ruff. She is an amazing person that I've dealt with just recently, and I'm going to let her introduce some more about herself. So please take the floor, Miss Latasha.
Hey, everybody. The only people who call me Latasha are my father and kids I went to elementary school with. So Tasha is fine for me. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor in the state of North Carolina. And I have worked in, colleges and universities, campuses, the jail, in-home therapy, private practice settings, and community mental health agencies, helping to support individuals, families, couples. And then with my business, I do interactions like this for groups such as yours, and then trainings for organizations. So that's just a little bit about me. Mrs. Diston, she introduced these candid conversations. And so you'll probably be seeing my face a little bit more as we talk about these things. So today's topic is going to be about living in a virtual world. Our agenda for today, should I just keep going, Ms. Diston?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay. All right. So our agenda for today is to kind of introduce these topics. Who are you and where is my child? Because in this age group, they act real special. And so I just want to make sure that you have information about what that looks like so that, you don't catch a case. No, I'm just playing. And then we're going to talk about going viral and just the internet usage and how big that is and how prevalent it is in our society. We'll talk about some boundaries, how to establish them, and how to enforce them. And then I'll put up a slide with some resources. These are just some general resources that can help you out if you need a safe space to look for good information that is like tried and true. Okay. So getting into who are you and what have you done to my child? Developmentally, our kids in this age group are just going through some things, right? You will see them act different, think different, feel different, interact differently. And the reality is all of that stuff is normal. Okay, so when they're having these sudden mood changes without warning, that's hormonal. Their bodies are changing. You all know all of this stuff already, right? And they just don't know what to do with all the things that are internally happening to them. And so you might see it come out in their behaviors, and they're acting way different from the child you thought that you raised, right? Um, there is a decrease in energy at this level in this season of their lives. They need, on average, 10 to 15 hours of sleep. So when your daughter is sleeping until noon on Saturday and you expected your house to be clean when you first got up, this is the reason why. And it's not because they're being lazy or shiftless or any of those other adjectives we can call them in those moments. Is really that their bodies needs this time of rest. So being sensitive to that is going to be important to facilitate your healthy relationship with your child. There is going to be definitely more focus on those romantic interests that they have in their lives. You need to expect the curiosity about their sexuality. They might like Dante this week and Devontae next week, and you might not be able to keep up with the names, but just understanding that this is a normal part of their curiosity that they're going to. And right now, where you used to be top dog and whatever mommy said or daddy said, that was just it. Now Their peer validation, having peer acceptance is going to be way more important than anything you can ever provide to them. It doesn't mean to stop giving their good stuff, the good stuff that you're giving them in terms of advice and guidance and stuff like that. It just means that when they weigh it against what James is saying, you might come out a little short. The key is going to just be to be consistent, stay present, and keep it going, right? They are definitely going to be way more secretive. They're not going to keep you in the loop as much, and that's normal for this age group. It is just a part of their trying to figure out to be more independent, that kind of thing. And that goes into trying on the new identities about self-exploration. A lot of times parents specifically get a little hesitant when we talk about new identities, especially in light of a lot of the sexual identities that exist, which might not have been as prevalent as when we were younger. And so when I'm talking about self-exploration, it's not necessarily in those ways. This is everything from, I know you raised me in the church, but now I have this Muslim friend, and trying to figure out what that looks like. I know that before I wanted to only wear boy clothes, or clothes that cover me up. And now I'm exploring maybe having on a belly top or whatever the case may be. So this is just the age where they're doing that thing. They're just naturally curious about what life is like. And they are going to test your limits. Okay, your authority is going to be challenged, and you have to understand that and be prepared for it so that you aren't responding, by jacking them up and that kind of thing, where because you are prepared for it, then your response can be a little bit different, a little bit more mild-mannered. So again, you can foster a healthy relationship with your child. And then the last thing, which a lot of times parents, I don't think really give consideration to, your child in this age group is really considering life and death, and not to the point where they're trying to commit suicide or anything like that, but more to the point of, they recognize that you aren't going to be here forever and they aren't going to be here forever. And so just kind of coming to terms with being finite, and especially when we are exposed to infinite possibilities because of our social media usage. So I cannot see the chat, but if you all have any questions, please put it in the chat, and Mrs. Diston will go ahead and read it aloud, and I'm happy to stop and answer that in the moment. And if not, we'll do it all at the end, okay?
We don't have anything in the chat right now, so we are good to go.
All right, so let's talk about going viral. All right, technology has taken over our lives. That's just the fact of where we are, right? When we were in school, we wrote letters. We passed notes in class. We had landline phones with a 1,000-foot cord that we were able to take all through the house. Now our children have access to all of that stuff right in basically the palm of their hands through smartphones, tablets, laptops, webcams. Even their video gaming devices can connect to each other over the internet. And a big part of our current culture, and not just for our teenagers and our preteens, but for all generations, is social media. Primarily to our age group, our children's age group, the primary social media platform, TikTok. I probably saw a few of y'all on them too with your kids, right? Instagram, and then Snapchat. And I pulled up some statistics from 2019 and 2020. It basically says that 90% of teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17 years old use social media on a daily basis. They are online for 9 hours of the day, and that is not including when they're doing homework. I'm giving y'all a moment to process that. 9 hours of the day spent on social media. That is, and I didn't even add YouTube usage here, but YouTube is very big for this generation, right? With TikTok, under the age of 18 years old, 32.5% of their users are our kids. Okay, and there are 800 million active users on TikTok at any given month. 800 million, did I say 1,000? 800 million active user, and our children make up 32.5% of that whole number there. On Instagram, 72% of our children's in, that 13 to 17 or under 18 age group for this one is 72% of their 116 million users. And then for Snapchat, we have 41% of their 97.55 million users. And again, that's 9 hours of them interacting with that. The problem with social media, because there are benefits to it. So let's start with the benefits. The benefits of social media is that people are able to stay connected to their friends and family if you don't, live in a general area where you all can get to each other. And then, of course, through this pandemic, it's been especially helpful for them to stay connected. So that's a positive thing about it, right? They can meet new friends, explore shared interests with each other. They're able to find a sense of community and feel supported. One of my daughters, she's a gymnast, and so she follows a lot of professional gymnasts, but then people send her videos of other gymnasts, right? And so she's able to engage in what she enjoys through social media. A lot of our kids are so talented, and of course, everybody wants to be an influencer or a music producer or whatever. And you do hear the occasional story about these people getting success in those ways. I mean, Justin Bieber, he was discovered on YouTube by Usher, right? So that's a positive, that's a benefit. And then just being able to explore and express themselves as creatively as possible. Think about all of the TikToks that you've been forced to watch or participate in, right? And so those are the benefits. Some of the risks are because at this age group, the frontal cortex in our brain is not fully developed. And in fact, science says that until they're 25 years old, they just aren't going to be good decision makers. They just aren't going to make appropriate choices because their brain is not fully developed. And so keep that in mind when you're thinking about how they are vulnerable to the social media era, because what's happening, the negative to the social media, is that you get a lot of cyberbullying, and that is easy on spaces like Snapchat, where you post a video and it goes away within 24 hours. So there's no evidence typically, but your child is impacted by it. Or if your child is the bully, then they're the ones that is scarring somebody else's existence, right? Children are being solicited for prostitution and other things on these websites. There are marketing scams. I know my oldest daughter, who I feel is very mature, she was getting a lot of invites for people offering her to be a brand ambassador because she had a lot of followers and her activity on Instagram. She was Instagram famous. Have you all heard that yet? Well, my daughter was Instagram famous and she was getting a lot of those things. The problem is she was excited about it. And then we, as her parents, we had to shut that all the way down because what they were asking for is for her to send $50, $100 to get started with the merchandise. But we all know that if someone is interested in you being a model or any of those things, they're going to funnel that resource into you, as opposed to you having to pay them to secure any of that stuff, right? A lot of drug trafficking is taking place. A lot of child pornography is happening. Specifically with that, what's taking place is because with social media, you don't really know who you're connecting with. I'm not sure if you all have seen the show Catfish or heard of the show Catfish or even recognize the term catfish. But basically, what that is that when I put myself out there on social media as a 13-year-old boy, but really I am an over 40-year-old woman. Do you get what I'm saying? Because you can screenshot anybody's picture, make it yours, because social media does allow people to be anonymous, right? And so what's happening with the child pornography is that you think that you're talking to a same age peer a lot of times. Even with the kidnapping and the prostitution, you think that you're talking to a same age peer, but really you're talking to a predator and you won't know that. There was two stories that I'm going to share. One with the child pornography, and you want to make sure that you're having these conversations with your children too. I had a client, he was a 17-year-old boy, good student, great athlete, very promising future for both of those things, right? And a young lady sent him a picture of herself. It was an inappropriate picture. She wasn't naked, but it was very sexual. And the police were involved because the school has some type of filtering service on their internet usage, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But they were able to see that he had this picture. Now, he was one of the good kids who didn't share the photo, because a lot of times you get that where a girl will send something, she thinks that she's only sending it to her boyfriend, and then he will share it with the entire football team or whatever, right? And anyway, the authorities found the picture on his phone, and he was going to be brought up on child pornography charges, even though he himself was a minor, because he had the photo on his phone. So he didn't delete it. He was just looking at it frequently, I guess. So you want to be careful about that, because if they would have brought him up on charges, he would have had to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. That is something that would have followed him for the rest of his life. It would have impacted his ability to get in colleges and universities. It would have definitely impacted his scholarship opportunities. And most importantly, his adult world. He would have to, where he lives, where he works, all of that stuff would come up with that, right? And then there was another situation where a kid thought she was interacting. She was young. She was maybe 11 or 12 years old. She thought she was interacting with the same age peer, but in fact, she was actually talking to a predator. He was an older man in another state. It's something that he was consistently doing. And he was able to get her to share all of the family business. So he knew that her parents were divorced, that her father lived in another state, that she didn't have a lot of interaction with her dad, all of these things, right? Because they're able to manipulate kids who are in this vulnerable age group, right? The long story was they ended up getting the police involved, but the dad ended up talking to the guy and trying to threaten him, and the guy was unconcerned. Do you know what he actually told the father? He said, "What you gonna do? You don't even live there." And so those are the types of conversations that you want to have with your kid. When we move to the last bullet point of the slide here, we're talking about protective steps, educating your family about what to watch for. So a lot of times people are a little bit more lax about what I call stranger danger. And just because they aren't going to the park by themselves or something like that, there is still the potential for danger, right? And so you have to, as the parent, you have to consider some boundaries to put in place in order to make sure that you are protecting your child, your privacy, all of those things, because some of the other risks that we didn't get into, aside from those dangers there, would be oversharing of personal information. One of my friends, her house was broken into when they went on a cruise, and because her son posted on Facebook that he was, on a boat someplace, right? So you want to be careful about oversharing personal information. Exposure to excessive advertisements is an issue, because what that does is that puts thoughts into our minds about what it is that we want, what it is we want to do, causing people to spend more money that they don't have, that kind of thing. Some of the other privacy concerns would just be how they are collecting data. We don't know what they're using it for, that kind of thing. And then you also run the biggest risk of identity theft or being hacked, because these kids are clicking on links that they don't even know they shouldn't click on, right? And then one of the things that we definitely don't ever consider in terms of a risk would be interference with sleep, exercise, homework, or family activities. And let's be real, if we are spending 9 hours on the internet, scrolling through our various social media, is definitely going to be a decrease in how much sleep you need. And remember, in this age group, they need 10 to 15 hours. 10 to 15 hours. Now, I was an English major for my undergraduate degree, so I'm not going to try to do the math, but 10 to 15 hours and then of sleep, and then 9 hours of scrolling through the internet, and then a school day. If your child is involved in activities, that can be an hour or two at a time. Do you see what I'm saying? So that it's a lot of interference with normal, regular activities that you and your family will be going through. So protective steps, educate your family to watch out for stranger danger. What that looks like is making sure that you are friends with your teens. For me, they had to be friends with myself and my husband, as well as our friends. So if our friends sent them an invite, they had to accept it, because what I might not catch and what my husband might not catch, my friends will definitely send me a screenshot like, "Hey, did you know that they said this?" And then that's a conversation that I have to follow up with my child, right? Sometimes what we do is no screen time. So when we're sitting down and we're having our family dinners, and we don't all eat together every day, that would be ideal and lovely. But everybody is just so busy that that's not really practical for my house. It might be great for your house. But when we do have those family times where we are all sitting down and eating together and it's not grab and go food, then no one can be on the phone, not even my husband. This is our time. This is our time to reconnect, to bond as a family, to remember that we actually like each other, right? And so we do that. The other no screen times will definitely be like when it's school time. And it's so easy for them to do that a lot. The other day, I really should be embarrassed, but I'm gonna tell y'all anyway. Um, my oldest daughter was getting ready to go back to college, and my son was upstairs with us while we were trying to make sure she had everything packed up. He had headphones on, and I'm like, "Why are you not at the table for school?" He was like, "I'm in school," pointing to his headphones. I'm not gonna tell y'all what happened to him because I don't want to lose my license. Um, but they're doing that all the time. So you have to reinforce those rules. No screen time when it is time for dinner, homework needs to be done, or school is taking place. No screen time. Some people in whatever works for your house, again, works for your house, but no screen time in the bedroom because there are doors and you want to make sure that you're staying on top of what's happening. So that is for you to decide what works for you. Um, my kids are not allowed to share their full names. Okay. They're not allowed to tell their address, give out phone numbers. They are not allowed to talk about um, social security. They don't even know their social security numbers. But if your children do, you're not sharing that information over the internet like that, right? Even some of these websites that they are, and this goes back to the dangers of advertisement. They'll see, hey, this new sporting gear came out and they want that. Well, you need to send it to me and I need to verify if that's a reputable site. Because what's not going to happen is you give your banking information that's attached to my banking information, and then we all sitting here looking crazy, right? So you want to be careful about those things. They are not allowed to enact or enable their location on their cell phones, on their tablets, even on their laptops, and definitely they don't do that when they're posting. And you think about when your kids are posting, say if you all had a family outing and you all were at Six Flags or something that's close by, maybe not sharing where you are, because what that does is alerts. And sometimes you have to be careful with those hashtags, like hashtag oldest daughter day and all that stuff, because there are predators out there who are monitoring those hashtags, and you've given them enough insight into your family, enough access to your family, that they'll say, oh, and now this pretty girl from your hashtag oldest daughter day is now at Six Flags. I'm just gonna go and figure out. She already posted that she's in a yellow shirt with a headband. So now I'm gonna go to the Six Flags and watch for the little girl with the yellow shirt and the headband. Do you see how all of these things are connecting? So you want to make sure that you're having these conversations with your children all the time. And sometimes it's okay to sit with them and just kind of explore what are appropriate websites for them to visit, why do they want to be on TikTok and Instagram, and setting up those restraints in terms of who can they friend, who can they request. Grayed out photos, they are not allowed to accept requests from them. If they don't personally know the individual and it's not a well-known celebrity, they are not allowed to accept those friend requests or follow them and that kind of thing, because children in this age group, again, their brain is not fully developed. So they aren't going to be able to perceive the dangers that are associated with it. And guess what? They are still alive, right? This filtering your internet service is something that you can add as a service. To what it does is you can set up limitations, like which sites that they cannot visit, or what it also will do is red flag something like this might not be a good one, and then it also will record what's taking place. So you can, if that works for your family, you can also do something like that. And that's just an easy Google search to see what service is going to work best for you, because of course there are fees associated with that. Any questions so far?
No, there aren't any questions, but this information is so amazing to even just receive, because I never thought of some of the things that you brought up, like the hashtags or the posting where you are, all of that makes sense. So I'm just taking it all in because I have 2 young daughters myself. So definitely these are things that I need to go ahead and set in place before they get of age to have their own
Absolutely.
controlled social media.
Yeah, absolutely. My one of my sisters bought for her and her husband, for their oldest daughter who was 7 years old. They got her a cell phone, which, on the one hand, it's like, oh my goodness, but on the other hand, it's like, this is where we are in life. And so having those conversations as early as possible are just going to be paramount to making sure that you and your children are safe and protected, right? So now here is the fun part of the conversation, and it is establishing boundaries. It's so important to do this. Boundaries are a lot of times looked at as rules, and they kind of are, but you need to kind of frame it when you're talking to your child as, no, I'm just really teaching you how to handle me. And in doing that, you also are teaching me how to handle you. So these are the confines of what our relationship is supposed to look like, and what the expectations are, so that feelings aren't hurt unnecessarily. Words aren't exchanged because words are damaging. I don't care what we used to say when we were kids about sticks and stones and all that stuff. Words do hurt, and words last a long time. So establishing those appropriate boundaries from the very beginning is going to be so important for you all. And it's as important to establish the boundaries as it is to enforce them, and enforce them consistently. For instance, my mother was a fusser. She would fuss, and then she would say yeah to whatever it was that we asked. So it's like, okay, I'll listen to you fuss for 5 minutes. I'm still going to get what I want, right? But has she enforced what she actually put in place, then we might not have tried her so much. God bless her heart. Okay. Whenever you're talking about boundaries, it's going to always be important for you to stay rooted to what's important to your family. What are your values? What makes sense for your family? You cannot I cannot look at Mrs. Distance family and say, oh, I'm going to do that, because it might not work for what is important, what we've already established as important for our family. Okay. I hope that makes sense. It's going to be important for you to realize that boundaries do shift, right? So my oldest daughter is 18. When she was 3, we had way different rules than we have for her now. When she was 16 and in high school, there were varying. You want to make sure too that you're being clear and that you're being reasonable. For instance, I would say, clean my kitchen. And then I would come downstairs later and my kitchen was not clean. Okay, I thought that I was being clear because I just spoke English to people who speak English and understand English to clean my kitchen, but nothing was done. Well, when I had the conversation with my children, what I learned is, to them, cleaning the kitchen means washing the dishes that are in the sink. That slow blink was on purpose, because that doesn't even make sense to me, but that's what they understood, right? And it wasn't until I heard them say that I was able to respond and say, no. When I say clean a kitchen, it means the dishes that are dirty, whether they are on the table, the island, the countertop. And then after you wash all of the dishes that are dirty, then I need you to wash off the top of the stove, the countertop, the island. And then guess what else? You need to sweep. And then the kitchen is clean. So you want to make sure that you're being clear. You can't have an expectation that they understand because they've been in your house all of their lives, that they're going to understand what that means. And then you want to make sure that you're being reasonable. And the reasonable part comes into, okay, so they didn't clean my kitchen. That doesn't mean that I don't feed them for a month. That doesn't, I mean, you can go to jail for that, I'm sure. But more about, you want to make sure that whatever the consequence is, and there has to be consequences, so that it's not a waste of breath when you share with them whatever your expectations are. You want to make sure that the consequences match what's happening. Think about yourself in your work environment, right? When you're at work, you are, if you have to get told something by your supervisor, there's first a verbal warning, then there's a written warning, and then there's some type of suspension before you get terminated. Do you get what I'm saying? And so you want to be reasonable in terms of what the consequence should be. Again, pertinent to whatever your household is. And then you want to make sure that you aren't taking any of these things personal when your child pushes back, because they are going to push back. If this is your line, they're going to try to step right here. And as often as you allow them to do that without enforcing the boundaries that you've established, they're going to do it and do it even more so. And then they're going to be like me, where I'm just going to listen to her fuss for 5 minutes and still get what I want. And I turned out great, but that is beside the point. You get what I'm saying? You also want to choose your battle. So if you've established something as a rule for your house, like, you know, you need to be matching when you leave the house, and they have on mismatched socks, it's socks, right? Is that important enough to disrupt the whole family environment for some socks? So you want to choose your battles, right? And then you want to be open-minded. This is really big. And I want everyone to hear me clearly when I'm saying that you are still the parent. So even though you are being open-minded, you might switch up some of your rules, you are still the person that is establishing those boundaries. And that doesn't change at all, ever. But our generation was pretty much raised of children should be seen and not heard. That doesn't really work for these kids these days, right? And I don't think that it really worked well for us. We just didn't want the shoe thrown at our head. And I might just be speaking for my household, but we just, we went along to get along kind of thing. These kids are not doing that. They're not raised like that, right? And so when I'm saying understanding generational roles, that means that sometimes you're going to have a conversation with them. You're going to have to explain why it is that you said it. And then after you've explained it, then you can say, and I said what I said. But it can't just be, no, you're not going to the party on Friday if they're saying, but why? Help them to understand, like, hey, I got a bad feeling about it. The police showed up there last week. It was a shootout. Whatever it is that is telling you that that's the rule, then be okay with kind of giving them an explanation. It doesn't dilute who you are as the parent. It doesn't take away from your authority. But what you're explaining to your child in that moment is, I hear what you're saying. I value how you're feeling. And at the end of the day, I said what I said. Do you get what I'm saying? And then here is some resources. I am going to send Mrs. I was getting ready to call you your first name. I'm so sorry. I'm going to send Mrs. This and That. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I'm going to send her some additional resources based off of some of the things that we shared. But these first few here, if you can see my mouse moving there, these are all related to understanding your child's mental health concerns that they might be dealing with. The reality is 1 in 5 of youth, so children under the age of 17 years old, have a mental health diagnosis, whether or not it's been diagnosed or not. That's just a scientific fact, right? And so these are some good resources to help you understand that stuff a little bit better. And as you can see, some of the websites are the same. So these are reputable websites where you'll get good information, okay? This first one here, Wired Safety, that's one of those internet filtering companies that you can look through to see what's going on. And this one is where I pulled some of the statistics that I talked about with regards to social media usage and that kind of thing. Parenting is just a general, when you need to figure out, how do I talk to this girl before I jack her up? That's just a good website to go through and see all of that stuff. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to you. Did I stop sharing?
Yeah, you did. So thank you so much, Miss Tasha. Yes. Since we're going to be on a not so Latasha type feel. So I want to thank you so much. The information was very vital. I learned so much. I'm hoping my parents have grabbed some important gems out of that as well. Thank you so much. But before we go, we didn't have anything in the chat, but thank you, Miss Noren, for attending our workshop, and Miss Chris Manis and Miss Sasser for joining our workshop. They're all saying that it was great information. Awesome. They needed this information, so thank you all so much. I'm going to put her email up real quick, so if you need to email her or ask any questions, you can. And while you guys are writing that down, I do want to share one other thing with you. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And you can also email me if you have any further questions, parents. So please let me know. So what I'm sharing right now real quick is just a workshop that is coming up January 14th. It is an SEL, social emotional learning workshop, and it is the Less Talk More SEL series. So please make sure that you go to Infinite Campus and follow the instructions in the parent portal to find the link and get registered. So just wanted to share all of that with you guys. Thank you again, Ms. Tasha. Thank you again, parents, for attending. If you need any more information, you can email me. I got my email right here. Or you can email Miss Tasha. Once again, thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you.